Previously on Madness in Wonderland. Having been hypnotized by the Hatter's sinister magic, even that may not be enough for curious young David. The rabbit awakens David to a new day and attempts to show him more of his palace. But is he really there for that? As he ventures further off into the castle, more and more begins to click in our hero's head. Soon he comes upon two massive doors. But wait, somebody approaches, and they seem pissed. What will become of David and the rabbit? Find out this time on Madness in Wonderland. Chapter 10 of Poisoned Minds and Wicked Lies.
Rise and shine. Shine and rise. Today is the big day, my dear king,
said a small voice. David sat up and looked around. Below him lay a massive king bed with red satin sheets and cherry oak wood carvings covering it. David looked around for the source of the mystery voice and finally found it. A small white rabbit with a waistcoat scurried over to the curtain and spread it open. Bright morning sunlight filled the room, blinding David for a moment. The rabbit turned back around and addressed David once more.
Ah, you are awake. Wonderful. Goody good. We must get you ready for your big day,
he said, rushing the boy from his extravagant place of slumber.
Big day? What big day?
Why, your coronation, of course.
David gave him a skeptical look, and he could see the rabbit's gaze falter slightly.
Well, you can't be a king without a good and proper coronation ceremony. Come, we mustn't be late. The Hatter gets right steamed when I arrive late to the party.
The rabbit disappeared into a massive closet before re-emerging with a gaggle of different outfits and accessories. David watched as the frantic creature went from outfit to outfit, finding at least one thing wrong with each of them, and it began to annoy the child.
Must we waste more time with these silly outfits, rabbits? I thought you didn't want to be late.
Yes, that is true, sire, but the clothes are such an important part of the... Oh, where are you going? Sire! Sire!
Called the rabbit as David walked out of the room. The rabbit ran after the boy, yapping and nagging at him all the way for his impatience. Halfway through the scolding, David stopped, looked right at the rabbit, and said,
Am I not your king, knave?
I beg your pardon, sire.
I am your king, am I not?
Aye, sire. Indeed, this is true. What of it?
Then what I say goes, and I say that no outfits are needed. I will wear what I please, and you will not nag me upon the matter. If what you say is true, then I should hear no opposition.
David smiled cockily to the rabbit, who reluctantly kept his lips sealed. As much as he wished it otherwise, the boy was right about one thing. The rabbit, however, kept reason of why he was right a secret. He could not afford to have anybody discovering anything prematurely. The two continued to walk until they came upon two large doors with clocks carved into the centers. Two royal guards stood outside, one dressed all in red and the other all in black. Both men held spears of the respective color according to each. The red was tipped with the shape of a heart, and the black a spade. Both men were motionless as they stood, reminding David of the guards that were posted outside the Palace of London back home. The doors opened, and on the left, a line of the same black-clad spear carriers could be seen. The only difference was in their spears. The soldiers' weapons were lined up in patterns: spade, clover, diamond, and heart. And on the right stood the red-clad equals, mirroring their different armored brethren. In the middle, standing ceremoniously next to the throne, was the Hatter. In his right hand, he held a golden staff, with, of course, a shimmering clock atop it. David walked down the row of guards standing motionlessly at attention on both sides of him, and when he had reached the end, he saw the Hatter raise his hands high above his head and bring them to rest, palms down at the waist. He looked around at the soldiers, who had now taken new positions around him. Each and every guard in the room simultaneously dropped to their knees and drooped their heads. The silence in the room was then broken by the Hatter, who called all the room's attention to him.
Loyal servants, guests, and fellow creatures of this great land. Today, our king receives our greatest gift and honor, the throne of Wonderland. Chefs, prepare the biggest feast you can imagine. You there, get me the very best players for miles and have them perform their most spellbinding performance. And you,
he said, pointing to the rabbit,
bring it in. It is almost time.
The rabbit hurried out of the room at a speed that made David raise an eye. It was fearful, hurried, like a frightened child afraid of receiving massive punishment. The Hatter approached David.
Ah! There he is. The man of the hour. How did you sleep, sire? I take it you found everything to your liking, eh?
He asked. David looked at him for several seconds. His eyes, they were different, but he couldn't place how. He racked his brain for the answer, which did not come. He knew that something about his eyes was not right. But his brain was simply shielded from the truth.
Perhaps I am imagining that I heard something about his eyes. It was a sound, right? But what of? No, not a sound. A warning from an unconventional source. But what was the warning?
Something troubles you, sire?
Inquired the rabbit, who had already returned from his errand. It must have been some time that he had been standing there for the small creature to have already accomplished this task.
No, just something I can't seem to recall.
Let it worry you not, sire. I'm sure it was of little to no importance if you were able to forget it so easily, no?
I suppose you are right. I'm sure if it is, then it will come to mind again.
Ah, that's the spirit, sire. Now, if you will please follow me.
David hesitantly followed the small rabbit as he led him out of the massive throne room and into the courtyard. Outside the castle, topiaries of all different sorts and shapes adorned the garden. Tulips, petunias, roses, lilies, and just about every other color flower flourished in the lush gardens. It was quite beautiful indeed. But something was off with the roses. At first glance they appeared red, but slowly, as he examined further, he noticed that they were changing color, becoming darker. Soon, they were black as onyx, and through one of the charcoaled petals crawled out a small blue caterpillar.
Who are you?
It said. Yes, the blue caterpillar spoke to David. But honestly, what did you expect?
What on earth is going on here?
Who are you?
Said the bug, sounding annoyed.
I'm David.
David. You are a liar.
Said the caterpillar, as he pulled out a small hookah pipe and began to blow smoke rings as black as the rose he laid upon.
A liar? How?
I asked you who you are, and yet you do not seem to know of the answer.
What are you talking about? I am David.
You are not.
If I am not David, then who am I? You seem pretty confident that you know. Go on then, enlighten me.
To answer that question, more must be done. For it is only then that the game may be won.
Game? What game?
No time to explain, just think very hard. Try and remember your friend, the card. Once then that the truth is known, surely, my friend, it will make you groan. At that moment, to the door you must flee. Only then will you truly be free. Arrive early. Do not be late. If you reach it second, you've sealed your fate.
Without leaving room for response from the boy, the caterpillar huffed a large cloud of blue smoke around him and then disappeared. David turned around and there stood the Hatter, looking, no, glaring down at David. David did not know what the Hatter continued to stare down at David for a couple of minutes in such intensity for. But he finally spoke to break the silence.
Sire, the royal feast is ready. Please, follow me to the dining hall. I think you will find the foods we've prepared in celebration of your arrival quite the delights.
The Hatter stepped in front of the enormous doors of the dining hall and bowed at the waist while removing his hat.
After you, King David.
There it is again. A strange feeling. The way he said king. Why does it sound so strange?
David stepped into the large and spacious room and there beheld a table of unbelievable length. Measured out, the massive feasting table measured exactly 25 feet across and nearly 2 feet wide. Just as marvelous, if not more so, were the various foods upon the massive hunk of wood. There were animals of every color meat, pies with dazzling berries, cakes with glowing icings, and practically everything else David could imagine. David looked closer at the table and saw what the designs carved into the sides were. They were small, intricately cut teapots, spaced out about every 3 inches, spanning the entire piece of the furniture. David then turned to the center of the table, where, directly sat across from David at the other end, sat the Hatter. He clapped his hands together, and David saw a teapot of the same size and shape as that of the one carved into the table's side, floating across the table to him. Soon, a cup and saucer of matching pattern also hovered its way to the boy from the opposite end of the table. The Hatter then snapped his fingers, and on magic command, the teapot turned itself upside down and began to pour. The Hatter could see the display of power had startled the small boy, which was his intention, to show just enough of his teeth to show how deadly he really was. He even had to stifle a small laugh when, in his confusion, the boy held out his hand to the teapot itself when he indicated he had enough of his drink, as if it really acted on its own. The Hatter, though possessing the ability to drink the tea without the use of his hands as clearly demonstrated to David, decided to abandon this measure of power and drink the tea as a, quote, mere mortal would. The Hatter smiled, for he was finally content with what was happening. How, I ask you, could he possibly be unhappy when everything was going so well? It was then that he remembered what happened just before the feast began.
That rose. Why did it turn black? The illusion should never be able to be broken. There's only one thing capable of breaking my wall, and I will not be driven away again. Years of living in exile.
Oh, pardon me, I get ahead of myself.
I know who is behind this. That damned insect is elusive. Didn't even notice his presence. But then, can he? No! Preposterous! He can't know! He can't know!
David looked at his host, who appeared to be having some quite visible problems at his end. David watched as his eyes would dart from one side of him to the next, as if he were conversing silently with his own consciousness on either shoulder. Finally, after a couple of minutes, David could hear a small whispering sound, which appeared to be coming from the Hatter. He identified that the Hatter was mumbling under his breath. Finally, David dug up his courage and spoke.
Hatter?
He said, though the Hatter didn't seem to hear David. So he tried again, this time louder.
Hatter?
Though again, no response came.
Hatter!
Screamed David finally. David jumped back in shock then when the Hatter shot back furiously with,
What do you want, you insolent?
but he stopped there. The Hatter knew instantly the mistake he had made. When he looked upon David's terror-ridden face. David quickly got out of his seat and ran out of the room. The Hatter, annoyed, sent the White Rabbit after the boy.
Do whatever you must, but make him forget that happened!
Roared the Hatter. The rabbit followed David until he realized where they were, and halted immediately. David, too, had stopped, for in front of him lay two enormous doors. Enormous by comparison. As to the other doors he had seen, these were 10 times the size. The rabbit knew well what hid behind these doors, and practically strained his vocal cords when he saw the boy approach.
No! Stop, 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 sire! Stop this instant!
David ceased his advance, examining the gargantuan wooden slabs just as he had observed the table. Again, 2 large teapots of peculiar design were carved into the center, while hearts and spades covered the sides. Unlike all other doors in the palace that David had seen, these doors did not appear to have any handles. It appeared to be a sealed door. So then it made no sense to David when the rabbit made such a fuss. David turned, asking,
Why, what's in there?
Well, sire, you simply cannot go in there.
You did not answer my question, Rabbit. This is my palace, is it not?
Knowing where this was going, he approached David and whispered,
I beg of you, please, do not open those doors. He might catch you.
The rabbit seemed scared. Deathly so.
He? Who, the Hatter?
At the mere mention of his name, a voice could be heard down the hall.
Shh! Listen.
The two stood silent as the voice took clarity. At recognition of the dreaded voice, the rabbit quickly pulled David aside and out of sight before saying,
Do not say a word. Only listen.
David did just this, and from this spot, he could just barely see what was happening. The voice had been the Hatter, but soon, another voice followed this. At first, he thought the second voice belonged to the Cheshire cat, but that thought would soon be put to rest.
Well, where is the little nuisance? Don't tell me you lost him.
No, sire. I haven't lost him. I've simply lost sight of him for the moment.
The Hatter picked up the rabbit by his throat and yelled,
Have him in front of me in the next 10 minutes, or you will be banished to the Red Wastelands. I think that we have a liar in our midst.
This was the voice of the stranger, and while David could not fully make out his figure, he could see the form of 2 long ears.
Why would you say that, brother?
Asked the rabbit.
Because you know full well where the boy is. He has been listening to our entire conversation, hasn't he?
David gasped, and in that second, his location was revealed. The cat could be heard laughing from behind him.
Davy boy. When will you learn that you cannot hide here? Well,
he wore a wicked grin, and began to wave his index finger in a tisk-tisk manner, and as he did, the room around him grew darker. The color began to bleed from the walls as the illusion was forcefully taken away at last. The Hatter, too, had the color drained from him. The once bright top hat now was dark, gray, and ratty. His eyes gleamed a bright crimson red, and his smile dropped. David could now see the second figure that had revealed his hiding place. It appeared to be a large hare with a red, equally ratty waistcoat which held a pocket watch. His fur was dark brown and clung to his body in ragged patches. The cat now appeared behind the two figures. The door to his right, the sealed door, shook tremendously, as if something enormous resided behind it. The Hatter pointed to David and spoke in a terrifying voice which came from all sides.
Don't you know, David? Curiosity killed the cat. To the wastelands with him!
No, please, sire, I beg of you, don't send him. He's only...
The Hatter cut off the rabbit by sending a firm smack across his face.
Guards!
David watched as uniform lines of card-shaped guards filed into the room. At the head of the line was a red Queen of Hearts and a black King of Spades. They grabbed him by the wrists as a new doorway appeared behind the group. A red door with a black handle, shaped like a heart. The guards opened the door, and there was a wasteland of blistering red sands. And before he could object, he came face to face with the red wastelands. And more importantly, her. Coming up next month, Chapter 11, The Queen of Hearts and Roses Red. Alone and scared in a land of blistering sand and draining heat. How will David survive this damnation? Wait, is that a castle? And it looks identical to the Hatter's. Curiouser and curiouser indeed.
Stop! Was nearly nigh. Dares approach the castle, the Queen of Wonderland.